what we like to do, one of the most important things you need to do when looking at Social Security is put it in the big picture. Again, this is where we sit down and go through every asset, every expense. And what we find is we can use it strategically. We can maybe lean on some pre-tax money, some different assets that you've built up over time in the first few years to let that kind of roll up for one, to help both spouses and have that higher benefit. But two, an 8% rolling up at an income stream that also is going to get cost of living adjustments is extremely beneficial and can be hard to beat consistently.
Yeah. And just to clarify there, what Mitch is saying is from age, your full retirement age,
yep.
whatever yep. that is, and for most people it's around 67 at this point.
Nowadays. Yep.
To age 70 where you have to claim
yep.
because it doesn't go up after age 70. So, but in that 3-year period, let's say your full retirement age is 67, in that 3-year period, you're getting 8% more income each year you wait to claim your Social Security benefit, plus cost of living adjustments, which is huge. Because at 67 to 70, there's not a whole lot of investments that we would probably feel safe putting you in at that point that's going to guarantee you, a 24% return over 3 years plus cost of living adjustments. So a lot of times, having that different strategy where you use some other assets to bridge, that period, and you lean on those other assets and claim Social Security later at age 70 makes a lot of sense.
It does. And, this is something we see, it feels like almost every week, where we've got, a prospect client comes in, right, and they've done the break even. They've gone online and they've said, all right, if I have X life expectancy, say I'm going to live to 90, and I've got, here's my Social Security at each age, where does it perfectly cross over? And that's great. But there's a lot of things people miss when they're calculating that, right? They miss inflation. They miss the other aspects. That calculation, that break-even analysis isn't considering what other assets you have. It isn't considering what kind of impact we can have with Roth conversion. What does our income look like? What is possible estate problem? There's a lot of factors, and it doesn't account for all those things. So, one thing we really like to do is the break-even's great, and, the math I'm sure can check out, but we like to really sit down and, again, understand that whole picture when we're looking at this stuff, and it helps a ton to understand the most optimal way to not only claim the Social Security, but potentially delay it and use other assets to help get to that point.
Absolutely. And I think, there's some other factors that come into play that we see a lot of where, we have people come in and sit in our conference room and sit across from us and they're wondering when to take Social Security. And we have the how's your health talk? Right?
Yeah, that's a big one.
And, they say, well, hey, I've got some pretty major health issues going on and don't really have longevity in my family, and most people are gone, in their early 70s and that. So we hear it all the time. I don't think for that individual this is a hard decision, right? If you are one of those people, then you probably want to go ahead and elect it at 62 and get as many checks as you possibly can. So that kind of trumps a lot of this other stuff that you don't need to even really think about. It's like, hey, if you've got major health issues, you don't expect to live that long, then we want to start this as soon as possible. And, it's kind of that old adage, do I want smaller checks for a longer period of time or larger checks for a shorter period of time? And, everybody's answer is different on that.
Everyone's is. And, another question, Stewart, we hear this all the time, and, I've heard you speak about this a ton, is, people will come in and say, hey, I'm in great health, but I'm worried about Social Security, right? I'm worried that, well, what if it's gone? What if they just all of a sudden stop paying? And, what do you generally say to that?
Well, I've had a lot of thoughts about this over the years, and they've changed a good bit. But I would say nowadays, one of the thoughts that I have is, hey, I get it. Like, I understand that you don't feel like, we have a pretty huge national debt. You don't feel like that there's a lot of stability with the government shutting down here from time to time and those sort of things. But, I would say this. Understanding what I understand now about, over the last 2.5 decades of helping people retire, what I do understand is how much of the U.S. economy is actually based on Social Security. If Social Security stopped tomorrow, I mean, Mitch, how many mortgages wouldn't get paid?
Right.
How many people wouldn't be able to put food on the table? How many, very critical services wouldn't be able to be provided to folks? I mean, our economy is very, very dependent on Social Security. And for that purpose, I would say Social Security is not going anywhere. What I would think would happen, and this is just my personal subjective take on it, is that they'll chip away.
Right.
They'll chip away over time, and as generations age into that picture of Social Security, they're going to, maybe they'll bump the full retirement age up another year. Maybe they will make it at some point where you can't elect at 62. You have to wait till you're 64. They're going to do some small things over time. But especially for those folks who are, either near Social Security or already drawing Social Security, I really don't see that could ever change whatsoever based on how much of the economy is actually based on those monthly payments.
I completely agree, and we've seen those technically the fund that runs all this is called the Old Age Survivors Fund, and we've seen this for years, where you see the headline, it's going to run out of money in 2032, 2033, all these things, and again, we're of the mind that it's just they can't just stop paying it, right? I mean, we have this debt, and we've seen that we continue to just climb into the debt to make things work almost. So it's not going to stop paying. Like we always say, I mean, if you're planning for Social Security in 20, 30 years, expect maybe a reduced benefit. Expect some of these, hiccups to happen, but it's not going to go away for people that are already on it. It would just cause too much problems. I agree.
Yeah, and again, I mean, we see, with the advances that we're seeing in technology with artificial intelligence and quantum computing and a lot of the things that are coming into play as we speak, I think that what's probably going to happen is we're going to see major efficiencies coming through in government and major efficiencies, starting to really make a difference in the bottom line. And I think those will be the things that help us to maintain, the solidify Social Security as we move forward, and make sure that, even as this fund supposedly is exhausted in 2032 or 33 or whatever the current estimations are, that we're able to make sure that we're able to continue to pay 100% of those benefits. And again, if we couldn't for some reason, I think they would alter it slightly and order to accommodate shortfalls, but it's just not going away.
I agree. And one more point here with Social Security is we've heard a lot of headlines about Social Security taxes have gone away, right?
Right.
This is something with the One Big Beautiful Bill I'm sure you guys have all heard about. And to clarify what's happened there is essentially for anybody over the age of 65 in this country, they've added an extra $6,000 standard deduction on top of the already raised standard deduction for seniors, which is extremely beneficial. And what that did is shifted a lot of people who were close to that Social Security taxation level out of the range to do that, which is extremely helpful.
Right, and they do phase that out at about $75,000 for an individual or $150,000 for a couple. But that is a huge change coming through here. When you go to file your taxes in April, you're going to be really shocked. A lot of seniors that 65 and older just haven't been able to mentally digest that yet. And that's going to be a really good thing. Hey, we're coming to the end of our second segment here. We'll be back here in just a few minutes and continue these great conversations.
Can't wait.
Retirement planning isn't just about growing money. It's about using it wisely, generating income, managing taxes, planning for health care costs, protecting your legacy. At ClearPath Retirement Planning, we specialize in helping retirees and pre-retirees transition from accumulation to distribution with confidence and clarity. If you're approaching retirement and want a plan, not just opinions, discover the ClearPath difference. Visit ClearPathRetirement.com today.
Welcome to ClearPath Retirement Radio. From retirement income and tax planning to protecting the savings you've worked a lifetime to build, this is real-world financial talk designed for real people. People who want clear answers, not sales pitches, so you can make informed decisions and plan for retirement with confidence. Now, here are your hosts, Stewart Smith and Mitch Davies.
All right, welcome back to ClearPath Retirement Radio. We are so pleased that you join us today. I'm Stewart Smith. Again, I'm here with my co-host Mitch Davies, and we are talking retirement today. We're talking about mistakes and things that we see in the firm every day that really, we're able to bring value and help our clients avoid. And, one of those that we see quite a bit of has to do with ignoring taxes in retirement.
That's absolutely right, Stuart. And, we see a lot of people come in and they've saved a lot of pre-tax money, say, and they think, hey, look, I want to save this as much as I can because when I'm in retirement, I'm going to be paying lower taxes, right? I'm going to be in a lower tax bracket.
Yeah, we hear it all the time. And what we've seen over and over, time and time again, as we do the analysis and we really take a deep dive on these things is, sometimes they do, often they don't, right? Require minimum distributions, Social Security taxation, Medicare premiums, the widow tax status surprise people. The biggest missed opportunity is the early retirement window before RMDs begin. So, Mitch, we ask this question a lot. Do you think taxes are going down in the future?
Definitely not. This is something we ask every time we speak in front of anybody, and we never get anybody raising their hand, right? And that's just, like we've mentioned, we're $38 trillion in debt at this point. It's a deficit that has been increasing, substantially over the last few years, and it's hard to make a case. If you look at historical rates, especially in the highest, tax bracket, we've had, back in the early to mid 1900s, we've had a 90% tax rate on the highest bracket. So there's a lot of room to run. So we're of the mind that taxes are only going to go up in the future.
Absolutely. And, like you say, every time we do a workshop on this stuff, we ask that question and nobody raises their hand. And so what it tells us is we're all pretty much of the same mind that taxes are not going down in the future. And especially with the deficit that you just spoke about. And, the other thing is, when they passed the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, it gave a lot of tax breaks, which was great, wonderful. I'm glad to have them. It really is going to help our clients handle retirement and save money on taxes. But, at the same time, that cost us, right?
It does.
Cost us. I've seen estimates in the $5 trillion range to give those tax breaks. And listen, eventually this stuff has to be dealt with. And what that tells me is eventually we're going to have to raise taxes in order to get this deficit down. And if we can't get GDP just through the roof, which maybe we can, and I hope we can, we're going to have to do it through raising taxes. So a lot of times, we'll talk about this as far as, tax planning. The most tax planning that we've been doing in the firm over the last 3 or 4 years, without a doubt, is looking at Roth conversion strategies.
No doubt.
For our clients. So, if we're all of the same mind that taxes are only going to go up in the future, then, and most of you people out there listening have money, pre-tax money saved for retirement in an IRA, a 401k, a 403b, on and on and on. If it's pre-tax money, right, you've never paid taxes on that money, you're enjoying tax deferral for now, then would it make sense, if you think taxes are only going to go up in the future, would it possibly make sense to start taking some of that pre-tax money and biting the bullet, right, and going ahead and paying the taxes on that money now and getting it over into a Roth account where you can enjoy tax-free growth once you get it into the Roth account, and